Good afternoon, everybody. Wanted to make a new video on the RTX 5090 Founders Edition. And what we're going to do is just kind of run through how it performs, how hot it runs, how it sounds, how it looks, feels, whatever, all of that good stuff. And right now we're going to start off with a completely stock graphics card. So we've got everything on default. We're going to actually close Afterburner altogether. And we're going to open up a game that I know uses a decent amount of power, and that is actually going to be our Indiana Jones in the Great Circle, because I know this game is ray tracing intensive. So we're going to open this one up. We're going to take a look. We've got our case door closed, got my fans set to about 50%, and when I say fans, I'm referring to the 4 120s on the bottom, 4 120s on the top, and the 120 in the back. These fans here push air in and up through the bottom vent and through the bottom of the case. And these fans here act like a tunnel to just kind of pull off any heat that may be on or coming off of that 5090. So it actually works pretty well. And we're going to open this thing up here hopefully soon. It just says a launching game. This might take a while. There we go. Alrighty. I want to see if we hear anything like coil whine. Probably go ahead and mute the sound here on my monitor. There we go. All right, continue. Let's turn on our overhead display thing here. That's a little cut off. There we go. All right, so the card is completely stock, and we're running 2700 range, 1.03 volts, about 440 watts. And I want to say this actually has the extreme frame gen turned on, so it's literally getting an extreme amount of frames, which is kind of cool because this game is maxed out in 4K and we're getting 236 frames per second, and it feels very smooth. I mean, it feels extremely smooth. Like, that is pretty good. I can't argue with that. We're just gonna look at the temperatures and see how it responds, see how it runs. Default power and everything, no overclocking. Looks like it's settling right into 2730, 2715 range on core clocks, which is great. I don't hear any kind of coil whine. But then again, at the same time, I'm not putting my ear up against the the graphics card, right? I'm being kind of realistic with it. We are just sitting about a foot away from the computer. Just gonna let it heat up and see what the temperature settle in at. That's awesome. I think it runs pretty cool, considering that is a lot of power. right? All right, let's open up our door and see if we hear anything. It's pretty quiet to me. All right, let's close that back. Temperatures dropped as soon as we open that door. Look at that. That's wild. All right, so what we're gonna do here is we're gonna do a higher fan profile, because I wanna say that the actual auto fan is pretty reasonable. It's pretty conservative. Having to kind of tab through here. You know what? It looks like it's almost reduced its voltage. That's interesting. See that? It's running a lower voltage, which may be responsible for that temperature drop. All right, you know what? Let's double check this one more time. Let's see what those temperatures are at. That's good. It's just hovering around that spot. So it's trying to balance out the power, clocks, all that stuff. Okay. Let me open up my, for some reason the Windows button in this game does not work. All right, so fan speed is 46%. We're gonna go to 56. See if there's any difference here. All right, temperatures are going down a little bit. All right, we're gonna go for a much higher fan percentage now. We're gonna go for 100%, just to see where it falls. You can hear it spinning up. All right, so we're 100% fan speed, 450 watts. And we're down to about 64, 65. $63. Hey, 62. That's fantastic. It's pretty good for 450 watts on a 2-slot GPU. I couldn't imagine having that on a 2080 Ti. We'd be able to overclock those things like crazy if we ran that cool with 450 watts, 2080 Ti's did not need 450 watts, so they would probably use about, 350, 400 is more than enough. All right, we're down to about 61 now. Move around a little bit here. All right, perfect. Okay. Let's do some overclocking. Man, I wish the Windows button worked. I'm just gonna hit Task Manager here. It still doesn't work. All right, let's just start increasing the clock speed. 100. What does that give us? 100 bring us to 2820. All right. 200. 200 brings us to 2910. All right. 300. 300 brings us to 2992, 2985. That's cool. Something interesting about this is the voltage is not going up. It's actually, you're running less voltage, trying to fit inside of a power budget, it seems like. I'm gonna go ahead and increase the power limit there. Okay, yeah, so we're at 3,022 megahertz now. We've increased our power limit. All right, so that's, man, that would be some, that's some good performance right there. I mean, this is, I could never do this with my 4090. So, regardless of how much power it's using right now, I could never run anywhere near 3 gigahertz on my 4090, and it had a lot less shaders than this. So seeing this, and that's with 100% fan speed, I mean, open test bench. So this is already looking very promising to me, especially if we go and undervolt this and try for a higher clock speed. This is really interesting right here. Now that is 100% fan speed, but I will say this, it's not that loud. The tone of the fan is pretty reasonable. Now with the door open, that's another story. It changes a little bit, right? You hear that screaming demon. A lot of airflow coming off of that thing. Let's take a look at our power cord temperature. See how warm that's running. We're going to use this little laser here, and we're going to take a look and see what this thing says. So, feeling the card, it feels pretty cool. We're going to check a few different spots. So we're at about 41, 42, depending on where we're pointing it. The wire itself is like 37, 34. And the part closer to the graphics card is probably going to be the warmest. I think it's good. No worries there. Just checking the card all over. Interesting. yeah, I think the power cable's okay. Then again, we're not pushing that much power. Now, if you look at our temperatures with the door open, the temperatures have dropped a little bit and the clocks have gone up a little bit. But it's cool to see that we can run this at around 3 gigahertz in games, because that's the most important thing, right? Gaming. Let's try to increase the clock speed even more. We'll do 320. I feel like we're getting close to where a limit may be. Okay, that's 3030. Interesting. Let's keep going. Sorry about that. I got work apps up and I'm trying to, you know, this whole Alt Tab thing is killing me. 335. That is looking like maybe temp limit there. It didn't really move up much. So we can try it one more time, but I'm gonna say we're probably at a temperature limit. 345. Never mind. It's still going. Interesting. 3052. Now, bear in mind, okay, with the graphics cards, the firmware on them is pretty cancerous. And when I say cancerous, I mean restricted. We're limited by power. We're limited by temperature limits, the temperature algorithm that's built into the card, and we're also limited by voltage. With a CPU, we can go in our BIOS and send a ton of voltage to it and cook it if we want to, right? We can't do that with graphics cards. We're limited by that. We're also limited by the temperature algorithm, meaning that even if you could manually increase the voltage, if X temperature is too warm for X clock speed, then X clock speed is going to be going down. So that's just things to keep in mind. But with the power envelope that we have here, gaming, this is 4K. This type of performance is fantastic. I mean, regardless, it's still running over 3000 megahertz, right? So that's something I couldn't do with my 4090. And this is only 1.03 volts, and that's higher than what it needs to even run this. So these cards are absolutely fantastic. Let's see if overclocking the memory does anything at all. Okay, so we're getting, our frame rate right now is 247, 227, 246, 218, 254. So we'll say 254, 247, 254 range. Okay. Now, I'm going to bump the memory up. And we are going to shoot the memory straight up to the full 2000. Let's see if anything happens. 251, 49. Nothing really meaningful. Our core clock is coming down. 258, 59. Okay, so a little bit. These cards already have a Godzilla amount of memory bandwidth, so I don't think it's too detrimental to overclock the memory on these things. But it is nice to see the core clocks run so nicely on these cards. Let's keep going with it. I'm putting the memory back to default. And I'm gonna do my, alrighty. Okay, there we go. 3045, 3052 is about where we're probably gonna be for 65 degrees Celsius. We would have to cool the card down, right, to get more. So no matter how many more clocks I add to this, it's just, I'm gonna be limited by the boosting algorithm. So like with most cards, we have, oh my goodness. Okay, now right, there we go, okay. All right, so for example, this card was running 59. It's gonna go up like, what, 15 megahertz or something? I'll try one more step and see what happens. 3060, maybe I'm wrong. It's interesting. It's, that's really cool, seeing that. The silicon is much better on these 5090s than the 4090s. I mean, much better. I couldn't even hold these kind of clocks with my 4080 Super, and it didn't matter on the load. It didn't matter. You could run, 720p, 1080p. You could run it 250 watts, 300 watts. You could not sustain more than 2.9 gigahertz, okay? So that's something to keep in mind. While power affects us, it's all gonna come down to, okay, let me get my afterburner. Where are you at here, afterburner? All right, let's do 375. It's running 3075 megahertz. Wow, that is awesome. Dude, that is nice to see. That's crazy. The headroom on these is wild. Okay, let's just do 400. Let's just see what it says, see what it does. 3082, 3090. Interesting. 100% fan speed. Yeah, these cards, silicon is way better than 4090s. I mean, you can feel it, you can tell right out of the gate. 100% fan speed. These cards clock really well. Really good. Definitely good clocking GPUs. Let's keep going a little more. Let's open our door. Let's give it a little advantage there. I'd like to see 3.1. There it is. I can't believe, man, these things on water cooling are gonna scale so good. Look at that, 3112, 3120. Unbelievable. And what's crazy is it's just sending that same voltage, it's just kind of chilling in that same range there. It's pretty impressive. I wonder where it's gonna stop. Probably like 3200, 3160 range. $31.27. Still climbing up. Interesting. $450. 3150. Interesting. Crazy. Man, can you imagine this thing on like chilled water? It would be a serious overclocking card. That is amazing. Really good. This would be like a golden 4090 if you're able to run games at like 3150 or something. Now I don't know what the standards are for 5090s and stuff, but definitely you can run some decently high clock speeds in games. Looks pretty good. 475. That was it. It just crashed. Froze up on us. That was, oh, whoa, no. Ah, wow. We really got it. Okay, guys, that was it. It looked like 3150 was the pushing point there. It was holding that. And once we tried to go higher than that, that's when it kind of gave up on me a little bit there. And that's where you just kind of push past, you're forcing that, you know, the boosting algorithm's trying to reduce the clock speed and you're forcing it. And that's just typically when these things just kind of go crazy on you. You don't typically see a blue screen with a graphics card, you know, when you're overclocking one. But, you know, so that's new. That's the first time I've ever had this crash on me. But anyways, I hope this was helpful, entertaining. These cards overclock really well, it seems like. I cannot imagine what one would do on chilled water or air cooling. I mean, really good, like air cooling or just ambient water cooling. I wanted to make an updated video. The last video I made, my card was not running proper clock speeds. It was running like 2.3 gigahertz. So I wanted to redo it after I installed a new NVIDIA driver that had came out yesterday. My clock started going through the roof. So I was like, man, something was not right. Let me redo this. No undervolting, but hey, definitely some overclocking and definitely good silicon on these cards. I think it's a good improvement over last generation. And thanks for watching. See you in the next one.